my kinfolk that I'm a legend. Only blowing big smoke with all of my brethren. Oh baby, she an info, she came in my section. The way she move that body, oh my God, it's a blessing. Come on, let's go. We on the road. It ain't no need to fight.
What up, though, everybody? It's your homeboy, Felix Sedan, a.k.a. Top 2 and Not 2. Welcome back to the Loft 313. I know we've been on a little hiatus. We giving y'all new episodes, new guests, and we coming back stronger than ever. As y'all can see, we got a new little setup going on this week. So we might switch it up on y'all again. You never know, man. We always coming with new flavor on this show. Shout out my whole team and everybody that's been supporting us. Make sure you take a second, hit that like and subscribe button, and keep checking us out. Go follow us on Instagram. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, iTunes, everywhere you can find podcasts. But we also want you to come on YouTube and watch us, look at us, have some fun with us. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest today. What up, my homie? How you doing?
What's going on? I'm doing pretty well.
Man, so tell the people who you are, man.
So I am Cody Tarantino. I'm an intuitive surrealist artist. I've been drawing every day for the last, maybe 14 years now, since I was about 9 years old. And right when the pandemic hit, I decided to get on TikTok and just start posting my work, and it kind of just blew up. I wouldn't say overnight. It's kind of been a really nice steady growth, which, that's like the best thing I could hope for out of anyone that, if you go viral or anything, a lot of people tend to just go up and then straight down. So it's nice to have kind of had this like stable rise over the last 4 years, and so I've been able to amass. I had 1 million followers on TikTok at one point before my account got taken down. We could probably get into that later, but it's just kind of just been working, just improving with the drawing stuff, getting into animation, getting into music, getting into a lot of different things recently. Doing designs for other brands and things of that nature. So yeah, things have just been on the up.
Nice. That's what I like to hear, man. All motion. We go, and we'll get into a little bit more of those specifics, but here we want to, my guests probably don't know who you are, so we want to get to know you a little bit better today in all aspects of it. You feel me? So tell us a little bit about your upbringing, like where you're from and shit like that.
So I'm not too far from here. I'm from Kalamazoo. I was born and raised. Okay. I mean, I don't maybe look like it because ethnically, I'm half Filipino. My mom came from the Philippines when she was in her 20s. So that's kind of my upbringing was a bit different there because I had like an immigrant household kind of. It was like half and half. So I had like the Asian mom that was like, why the fuck are you not doing your like what's going on with your grades? And then just a chill white dad that's like, do whatever you want. Like, so I don't know. It was interesting. I had some interesting freedoms, but at the same time, none of my parents or their extended family or anything was artistic. So I didn't have really much of an artistic influence growing up, really, except for my good friend Ryan, who's here today in the studio.
Shout out my boy Ryan.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Ryan and me, we became good friends in 3rd grade, and he taught me how to draw a cube, and I'd never really drawn that shit before. I'd never seen that. I was like, you could draw 3D shapes? Are you fucking kidding me? And so I pretty much just took that to the next level, went home, learned a bunch of stuff, and just every week we would just kind of compete. Like just friendly competition all the way up till high school. He ended up doing graphic design and stuff, and I just continued on with the drawing. And it's kind of interesting because since day one, we always had plans to start a clothing brand, to do brand deals with other companies using artwork and stuff, and just it feels kind of strange now, kind of running the whole social media thing and just failing over and over again in high school, only till when COVID happened, we just knew the opportunity was there, and so we took it.
I got you. So that was my next question. What got you into art? So you said you drew a cube, and then you kind of were you were fascinated from there.
Yeah, I was. Ryan and I would just learn new perspective things, just the fundamentals of drawing. But we found it fun. It was never homework for us or anything. Yeah. I talked to a lot of aspiring artists and kids that are getting into drawing now, and they see it as I have to practice this and that. It's well, if you could just make it fun and don't think about it as, I'm practicing this, but actually find enjoyment in the process. And nothing really feels like work to you. It all just kind of feels like you're exploring a new passion or whatever, and you're just going to keep on following the bread trail.
I got you. So my brother is an artist too. My older brother, shout out Crash Haney. He's been drawing his whole life, crazy pen work. And I feel I don't feel like it was ever a chore for him, but he never found what he could do to further it and take it to that next level until he started tattooing. So it was 1 year he had been talking about tattooing. We got him a tattoo gun, the little fake skin, and now he's going crazy. He's only been tatting for 2 years, and some of the stuff he's doing is insane. I'm gonna pop some of his tattoos on the screen so y'all can check these out. Dude's crazy. Make sure you check him out. Great prices. But yeah, it's crazy how like your inspiration, you don't think of something that you're gonna do, and then the next day, you feel me? It's like all you can think about, all you can work on. So I definitely feel that. I feel like that's how it was with me for like music and entertaining and shit. Like one day it was just that's all I want to do.
Yeah, yeah, because well, the thing with art too is like you most things in life like it's like a skill that's pretty logic based. Like you kind of follow like okay, if I'm gonna take on this trade or whatever, like these are the logical steps in order to get better. But when it comes to art, there's not really like one way to do things. Like you can't tell an artist, okay, here's all the steps. That's why art school is kind of hit or miss for a lot of people. Like, you like it's a lot about finding your own journey and stuff. Like you're talking about your brother with the tattooing and stuff. Like there's some people where it's like that might not be their medium of choice, and you just turn them this way a little bit, and all of a sudden like you just see this explosion of creativity and like their full potentials reached.
Okay. So other than like Ryan showing you the cube, who else inspired you at a young age? Because I'm sure once you started learning and practicing, you started studying too, becoming, a student of the game. So who are some early inspirations for art for you?
Shit. Well, I'd have to credit my uncle who in like middle school introduced me into comic books. And he gave me, I remember specifically, it was X-Men number 268, and it was this cover by the artist Jim Lee, and I had like Captain America, Wolverine, and Black Widow on it. And I just like loved the shading style. And from there, I just started collecting a ton of comics, like Silver Age. So I collected all like the old Spider-Mans, Fantastic Four, specifically just because of certain artists, and I just really like the covers and stuff. And so I would really look into certain artists. But I think for me, it wasn't so much their work that I was fascinated by. Like to this day, my inspirations are always it's more so the myth around them and what other people have to say about them after their death, or like just like other stories, because that really tells you about a person and their action in everyday life compared to just like hearing it straight from them or whatever. So there is a specific artist, Jack Kirby, I remember I got really into. And if you guys don't know who Jack Kirby is, basically Stan Lee like took all the credit for like everything Jack Kirby ever did. Like Stan Lee would just walk into the office, be like, "We're running out of money. Can you make like a thing with like a guy that looks like a rock and an invisible girl?" And he'd pretty much just like make the entire story from like a few words. But I remember hearing stories of like he'd be in his basement drawing over the summer, just like the next issue of Captain America, and kids from the neighborhood would come and watch him. And they said it was like no other artist they've seen where he would start on like an arm, and then instead of like connecting the dots or like kind of doing like a pre-sketch, you just like move on to the leg and then move on to like the shield and just like slowly just piece it together in this weird way where it just all come together, and it made no sense. And as a kid, I was fascinated by that, and that's kind of what my style has turned into, where it's just like I could go here, then here, and all just kind of forms into the image.
Yeah, I feel like so like the first day we met, you were showing me a lot of your art, and I definitely can catch that vibe from you about like kind of being all over the place, but then eventually the chaos is controlled, and it comes to one single idea. I feel like I'm the same way in the sense like with music when I write, sometimes I'll write the first two bars, then I'll write the 14th through the 16th bar. Then I'll go in the middle of the verse and change the rhyme scheme. But then eventually it all comes together. So I feel you. Some people just work better that way.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned it really like I've really honed it in with I like discovered my love for like jazz in high school, and just like kind of seen how like a lot of like the old I'm a huge piano player. Like I love playing the piano. I don't know how to read notes or anything, but I listen to like Oscar Peterson, Errol Garner, all these old pianists, and one thing that I really loved was that they all had their like set patterns, and you could tell like as someone that plays the piano a lot, you have your own patterns that you've kind of learned over time. I'm sure you as a musician, there's certain cadences or things that you could kind of return back to, and then once you build enough of that out like into your like web of or like sphere of what you can do, you could start to just like have different arrangements and patterns within those patterns, and just start to, and that's where you could improvise kind of, and the things that you're used to, let's combine it in a different way this time and mix and match. And that's where I feel like a lot of people, they stress about originality being dead, when in reality it's like you could just combine anything that exists in the world in a new way, and that's pretty original in itself.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. I feel like as an artist too, like, originality is one thing, but like pulling that inspiration from other people is what like, takes you to that next level, like something that they probably wouldn't have thought of from just their simple idea, tweaking something a little bit from something that's already beautiful and just making it greater. I feel like that's like the essence of artistry. You know what I mean? Like that's definitely the essence of artistry, is like pulling from your inspirations and just making something new. I feel it. Okay. So I definitely can see your inspiration from comics. Like hearing that was like early on for you, like looking at your art, that makes a lot of sense. So who are you pulling inspiration from now? I mean, at this point you're doing great things. You know, you're already kind of on your way up. So but you know, we all are inspired every day as artists. So who's inspiring you right now when it comes to art?
Good question. So a lot of my fans will come to me every day and they'll be like, Cody, I found this new artist. He's like just like you. You got to look at him. And to me, that's like the biggest turnoff to like find someone like a that looks exactly like my art is very similar to. It doesn't like to me like I want to be inspired by things that are completely out of my realm because then that brings something new for me and my style. So like other people, it just makes me more different than the people that are already like me. So being inspired by, I think recently it's been everything but like my normal traditional art stuff. Like I get inspired, like I'll watch a documentary on the Patriots and like Bill Belichick would be like talking to the secondary team, and like I'll gather more inspiration for like the next like month or two from that from like than watching a drawing video, like because you could apply things like you know art reflects life, and so there's a lot of things you could life lessons that you could apply from other crafts, especially comedy. A lot of comedians I like, just their timing and the way that they carry themselves, and also again like the myth around them and their actions. Like to me, that's more inspiring than just like what this person drew the other day. Sure, there is competition, and I think it's always good to have just a little bit of just a little jealousy in you, like to be like, oh, is that what they just did? All right, I'm gonna try to level them up next week. But besides that, you know, I try to find inspiration to just things that are like just completely different, and I could find it, draw a connection to my craft. I think that's the coolest thing.
I like that. So so that's where your inspiration's coming from. Who would you say are your top five right now? Who are you loving right now? Whether new or old, just who's in your top five?
Oh shit. Let me think. I'd have to say one of them's Hayao Miyazaki. He's a Japanese animated film director. If you guys are familiar with Studio Ghibli at all, um, usually in like American like Pixar films, like it's you have like a group of writers, and it's like it's less like at that point it's more of a business decision than it is like an actual art like piece when they're making the next Toy Story, and there's like 20 writers that are all like perfectly like calculating every line and everything, so that every kid knows what to think. But I don't know. The Japanese way of doing it is more like a dictatorship, but I think it allows for more like just artistic freedom and stuff. And I love the idea of just like having like animated films to me is like the coolest thing in art because it's like you control the music, this like everything, every aspect, the movement, the every image is there's it's like moving images, crazy.
Before we move on, I've always wondered how long does it take, like, if you had to animate like a short video, how long would it take to draw an animation on like a 10-minute video?
Whoa. Well, my first ever animation that I did, which was on Procreate, it was like a little 30-second like mini animated video, a music video that I made. It's like 239 frames. It was like 15 frames a second, which is kind of high to be honest. That took me about 8 hours to do. So I don't know. Some people work differently. There's so many different styles of animation too. Like, you know, you could have a very loose style or a very clean one that's like very bubbly, and it depends. There's so many different ways of expressing yourself with animation, and usually there's only like a few ways that you see just commercials and stuff. But I'm interested in exploring kind of the more like chaotic methods of animation that I don't really see much of.
Yeah. So do you have to draw each movement, like every single movement within seconds, or do you draw certain shit, put in the program, AI helps out? How does it work?
That's what I'd like to, honestly. Like, I wanted to do animated films, and part of me is like, well, am I gonna have to hire like 200 of these people to be like doing all these filler frames, or do I just wait for AI to get big enough? Yeah, and then part of that is like an artistic integrity thing. Like, I don't like. There's a gray line there, and I don't know yet. AI is so new, so. I don't know. I think I'll let that pan out. But when it comes to like animation, there's so many. I mean, I was never formally taught. I never went to school for any art thing. I was just from day one, for the most part, just researching stuff and just failing over and over again, and just trial and error. And I think that's the best way to do things for the most part.
Yeah. Get out here and fail, man.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't be afraid of failure, else you're not going to really get anywhere. I've learned. Like it's, I don't know. There's so many people. Kids that I talk to that are like working on art projects or whatever, it's always like gets to a certain point and they just want to stop and give up on the project because they're like, I know this is gonna suck by the time I'm finished with this drawing. It's not gonna be worth it. But if you're never gonna see a project all the way to completion, then you'll never be able to like actually truly like gauge yourself for like where you are where's your potential, like where's your skill level right now.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so we got off on the top 5 artists. You gave me one, so let's keep going down this list. My bad to throw you off.
No worries. I get in like so many rabbit holes with things, so thank you. But the second one would have to be Norm Macdonald. He's a comedian. He's just a weird guy. I don't know. I just like people that just don't act like the norm and just kind of are able to do their own thing. And you know, some people have like just completely weird perspectives, but if they're able to share that and communicate that, like how they see the world to the audience, I think that's really special thing. Because most people, they try to relate to an artist. They don't try to like actually understand their point of view. And so it's like that's a very hard thing to do, I find, artistically. And he's one of the few comedians that has done that. I could ramble on about him for hours, but it's not worth it for this podcast. But
Okay, who's next in line? We got 2.
ooh, let's go Errol Garner. He's a piano player. He died in like the 70s. But what I really liked about him is that he did not know how to read music at all. He's like 4'11" guy that used to like put phone books on the like the piano chair for him. It's because he was like too short to reach the piano for a lot of places. But he was a weird guy. He like barely would like talk or say anything to his bandmates. There's a lot of interviews of them. Like, so they're like, "What's he like?" And they're like, "No, he just like would garble and like not really say much until we're like in the middle of playing." And he'd be like, "I saw you in your hotel room last night." And they're like in the middle of a set, and he's like playing, and they're like, "What the hell? This is like the first thing he said to me all week." But like, I don't know. There's just interesting characters like that. I don't know. 2 more. Oh man, I can't really think of any right now. I guess one of them would have to be I don't know. I've been getting into a little bit of football recently. You know, Dan Campbell, the Detroit Lions. It's cool to kind of see that turnaround.
Yeah, the turnaround is great. I mean, it all started last year. You know, if you were keeping up with us last year, you know we should have went to the Super Bowl last year, but some bullshit happened, you know. But we back to it, and the team is looking great, man. Team is looking real good. And Dan Campbell, I would call him an artist. Like the way it's like he's playing Madden out there, bro. He's going for it on 4th down. The trick plays are crazy. I know y'all saw my boy St. Brown throw a touchdown pass to Golf last week. Like he's an artist for sure with the plays he's calling out there.
Specifically, one of the things he said recently really stuck out to me because, you know, I'm an intuitive surrealist artist. That means I like really use my feelings and emotions a lot to create art. And so it's like if I'm kind of just sitting there in my head all day, just kind of exaggerating these things, it's really easy for me to like carry on that mindset and kind of just be in this like bubble of not really the present moment, just like up in my head somewhere, not really. I'm very disassociated. And Dan Campbell has said something recently like if you just focus day by, don't think about like the big, like, yeah, you could think about the big picture, but we're just trying to tackle every game right now as it comes. You don't have to think about 3 games ahead or whatever. Just focus as it comes. Because for me, I get way too overwhelmed in the back of my head with just like all the million projects have to work. So just like simple things like that. Like football is such a like in the present moment thing. And so it's just always good to get lessons from that as someone that's like very not in the present moment, just as reminders. So that's why I find people like him kind of inspiring to me.
Nice. Yeah, well, I think something that they always say, like when you're like one foot in front of the other, just because, you know, if you can't do that simply, you can't walk straight. You know, you're going to stumble, you're going to fall. You got to make sure you're focused on the present because the present is really what's going to affect tomorrow anyway. You know, if you're so focused on tomorrow, you're not even doing what you got to do today to make sure tomorrow can be a success or can happen, you know? Yeah. So I feel you. Football teaches you that. I played football from like 7th grade till I graduated high school, and I learned a lot of valuable lessons just about camaraderie and like, you know, being dependable, because football is one of those sports where, I mean, a lot of sports are like this, but football for sure is one of those sports. Like if you don't follow your assignment, if you fuck up, you're going to fuck it up for everyone.
Exactly. Everyone has to hold each other accountable, and, you know, you have to have a respect for each other and if you're going to actually work as a group.
Exactly. So it's like a lot of individual responsibility, but then what you do as an individual is going to affect the group. So it teaches you that integrity to like do the right thing, you know, whether somebody's looking at you or not, shit like that. Yeah. Okay, you got one more in you? This is a very peculiar list, and I love it.
I know, yeah. I really try to find like just weird things out there that are just completely out of my zone to get into. I don't know. I'm a really indecisive person. It's hard to like. People ask me what my favorite color is and stuff. I don't know. Like they ask me a favorite song. I'm like, it's a birthday song. Shut up. Like I don't go any further usually. So I guess for my 5th one, I'll just leave it up. It's like every week there's a new one, so I can't tell you. I guess. As just something else every week. That's some new mythical legend I find.
Word. Well, I want to get into some of these pieces and projects that you've been working on. So, first, before we talk about some of the specific ones I know that were a big deal for you, what are some of the pieces that were your favorite? Like, can you give me a few that you've done that you absolutely love?
I think the first one that really comes to mind was so like right before the pandemic hit. I remember it was like February of 2020. I had watched, I talked about my first inspiration, Hayao Miyazaki. I'd watched my first ever Ghibli film from him. It was called Spirited Away, and every year I always tried to tackle since I've been like drawing every day as a kid. I always tried to tackle one big project where I just put everything in. I'd go all in on it until it was finished, no matter if it sucked or not. I'd just put it all in at the end of the year just to kind of gauge where my abilities were. And I remember that was kind of my big project, and I'd never done acrylic painting before or anything. I'd always been just drawing. And so I came up with this. It took me about like 20 hours just to plan the composition and everything. I really sat there and thought about like, okay, if I'm putting this character here, what's going to bounce it out on this side? And then what's up here to bounce this color out? And so I'd never really done anything like that before. So it was this crazy, just like super slow process. I remember Ryan and a couple of my friends at the time, they were like, you're like, yo, come on, let's go out and do something. I just like locked myself in for a month and just refused to leave. And I just lied to them. They're like, are you home? I'm like, no. And then I'd hear a knock on my window 5 minutes later, and my mom would let them in, and they'd have to drag me out to like do anything. But like that experience there of actually like self-discipline, like, and really putting my abilities to the test and what kind of came out, it's still, I think, one of my most popular pieces today. To be honest, it's the one where like people see it and they like are able to understand the feelings I put into it without me having to say a word or explain anything. And it's like, and they don't even know like what I think childhood nostalgia is really what I was trying to convey, and that really comes through without me having to say a word or anything. So that's how I know that I achieved it there, and I think that was kind of like a turning point where all of a sudden just tackling those big projects immediately just makes you a better artist, in my opinion. Like it cut down my time on all my pieces by a bunch. I'm like just way more efficient, way more effective in everything I do.
Okay, so what I was gonna ask you though, do you name your pieces?
Yes, I do. Sometimes the names come to me like before I start the piece. That's kind of a rare occasion. Usually it's something I figure out afterwards.
Word. So what would you call? What was the first one called that we were?
Forest of Imagination. That was the name of that one.
Okay. Do you if obviously you sell pieces, but if they don't sell, do you keep them? What do you do? Do you decide which ones you're gonna keep and sell, or do you just make art and you're just like whatever happens happens?
I think for the most part, like for me, I've always really cared about the process, and it took a while. Like even like as I was like transitioning into a full-time artist, like Ryan had to help me adjust with this, where I just only gave a shit about the process. Once the piece was done, I don't care anymore. Like for me, it was like just living through and just expressing whatever was in my head. That's all I really cared about. Because that that for me as an artist, that was fulfilling. It wasn't the whole like, look at the piece I did, guys. Like, don't you guys like it? Like, I just wanted to create and move on. But it slowly took me a while to like, okay, remember that these art pieces are valuable. Like, I can't just be just throwing them around willy nilly.
No,
like,
100%.
and I think that's to me that's I think good in my like on my part, like as artistically, that like I'm so focused on the process. I think that's what you would want in an artist, to really that they're honed in on their craft and really obsessed with that part. But there is I think something there that I learned along the way about valuing my pieces, and there's some that I keep for myself. Back in the day, I was just like, whatever. I go to the next piece. I have a new idea. Like that's what matters right now. Like you figure out what to do with that for selling it or not. But yeah, I think I have a better outlook now on my pieces and stuff. I don't I don't keep as many as I should, I think, but like I do have like sketchbooks that I refuse to like let anyone take any pages out of, and that's to me like that's my big thing that I get to keep because it's almost like a personal timeline for me where I could look back at pieces and look at it and just remember what I was doing, what I was going through during the time, where I was. And so to me, that's, I think, the only art piece that really matters to me that I keep.
Nice. Okay. So before we get into the next one, I just sparked my joint. Shout out Cheech and Chong. I'm sure y'all have heard of them. We got some of their product on the show today. Some apple fritter, these little 3-packs, and then we got my boys at Legacy. Shout out to the people over at Legacy. You know, keeping us stoned for the podcast. So let me know what was the next piece. So you talked about that one where you said you wanted to convey more of like childhood, memories, things like that. What's another piece that you really got behind that you like a lot?
Ooh, the next one probably be I think the most detailed and like complex piece I've done up to this point. It's called Hermeticism. It's 11 by 14 pen and ink illustration. And usually, like a lot of my pieces that you'll see, like they're free flowing and freehand. But like the ones that I'm talking about, these are like the passion projects where I don't cut any corners. Like I don't give myself a time limit or anything. Usually I like to give myself deadlines and stuff like let's get this done here just to be efficient and move on and make sure that I'm just consistently putting out work. But when I do a project like that, those are the ones where I really like mindfuck myself and just try to like really push the like limits past what I think is possible with my work. So for that one, it was another 20 hours of planning the composition. And this one, it was, Hermeticism and like there's a whole lore behind it and stuff, but basically Hermeticism is kind of like, it's almost, you could find it in like almost every religion around the world. And there's Hermetic texts from thousands of years ago that, you could find in Christianity and Buddhism and all these different things. And it's almost like something that existed prior to all these things. And so I wanted to be able to tie something together. That's something that's very interesting to me is like, taking different cultures and being able to like infuse them with my own imagination and stuff. I've always found that beautiful. Hayao Miyazaki, again, that animated film director, but there's a few movies where he would do something, it's called Princess Mononoke, but it's like it takes place like hundreds of years ago in Japan, but there was not really much written history, so he just used his imagination to kind of fill in the gaps. And so it made for this really great, fantastical yet like historical piece. And so I just love that idea of like being able to respect a culture or a religion or anything, a way of thinking, and being able to like kind of incorporate it all. And so like I remember there was like cherubs, you had like little parts of Hinduism above, and just like everything kind of revolved around life or death and dualism and just kind of the duality of everything and how everything connected compositionally. If the piece was here in front, I could probably point out like we could have an image maybe pop up of it.
Okay, we'll pop it there. I got you. Going to send it to me. We'll make sure they can see what's going on. So when you talk about those things, like, and for you history buffs, don't quote me on this. I'm just speaking from shit I've heard. But back in the day, like when I say back in the day, I'm talking way back in the day, like first civilization, like the Mesopotamians, where they talk about like the Anunnaki and shit like that, where a lot of those stories kind of mimic the Bible. Well, the Bible mimics those stories because they came first. So that's just kind of crazy. So I feel you about that, where it's like the same thing we were talking about earlier. They're pulling from the past just to bring something new and a different kind of perspective and trying to understand it. Because that's all the Mesopotamians left behind was, those drawings and those scriptures and things like that, where they're talking about, these gods that come down and fucking wipe shit out. It's crazy. If you haven't heard of the Mesopotamians and the Anunnaki, look that shit up. It's insane.
Yes, sir. That's also another thing that's so fascinating. I was such a history buff growing up, especially like World War II, but like other things as well. But I always found really cool just like how there's like a story that originated thousands of years ago and it just takes on so many different forms to different cultures, like all the way up like to the present day. I don't know. That stuff is interesting. And I also just picked up a book on African folk tales, but they talked about how since there's not much written, it was just like a storytelling thing that would just be passed on from generation to generation, and it would slightly change. The message would stay the same, but like just the way the story was told would always be different. And I don't know. I always find that stuff like very fascinating.
Yeah, I feel you 100%. It's history is fascinating in itself, just like knowing what happened before you and there's always three sides to a story. You know what I mean? So it's like you get it. If you dig deep enough, you can find all the different angles of people's perspectives because everybody's perspective is a little bit different. You know, so that has always been very interesting to me too about like the past specifically.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really influenced me as an artist is being open to different perspectives too. I think that's one trait that most artists share is that they're pretty open minded and accepting of new ideas or just trying to be able to understand it. And if they don't, they try to work through it through the work they make or how they express themselves or whatever. So I always find that a bit interesting when it comes to those things. But yeah.
So, still talking about projects here. There's a couple projects that I want to highlight and kind talk about, dive a little bit deeper into. So the Uniball project. So tell us about this. What's going on there?
All right. So when I was, I guess I'll start this from like the beginning. When I was a kid, and I think I was talking about this earlier, how I didn't really get into painting that much because I was really good at illustration and stuff. And the reason behind that was because when you use a brush, it's like a pen, it's like you have absolute control where that line goes. A brush is like a million little points that are like could all go in different directions. So it's like a lot more unpredictable until you kind of get used to it. And so I was struggling when I was younger, like trying to figure out how to use a brush. And so I found this alternative as these paint markers called Pasia paint markers or paint pens. And they were like pretty much just a drawing utensil, but it had paint. So it was like a really good like alternative for me, and that's Uniball. That's their brand, or one of their products was Pasia. And I remember Ryan had bought a pack of those, and he didn't need them anymore. He's like, "Here, you could have these," and they're like the coolest markers ever. And I was like, I'd love to be sponsored by them one day. And then move on a little bit, and I get inspired to paint by this artist, Diego Rivera, who, if you guys know him from Detroit, he has that crazy industrial murals at one of those big.
I was gonna say that name sounds super familiar, but yeah.
Yeah, and so he's a Mexican artist, and I think the Ford family like flew him out because they loved his work and stuff. He was married to Frida Kahlo, who is, if you guys don't know her, if you've been to Mexico or know anything about Mexican culture, she's like the lady with the unibrow that's like in every artistic like painting and stuff that you see. And so I was really inspired by him because I saw these videos from the 1930s in Detroit where he's like painting, and I was just seeing how he used a brush, and I was like, holy shit, I never thought about it using it with those techniques that he was using. And so that's how I got into painting. And so now fast forward to like earlier this year, I got reached out to by the Pasia Uniball team, and they're like, hey, we would love to, like do, some advertisements with you. We'd fly you out to Mexico City, and we're going to rebuild your studio, or kind of like a version of your studio in Diego Rivera's estate. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was like, how is this happening right now? I didn't even like really believe it was happening until I was on the plane, but I don't know. So it's kind of a dream come true, and it's like almost everything Ryan and I had done from day one of meeting each other. Like, okay, we're gonna really seriously pursue this art thing. To give me the Pasia markers and my whole learning experience. It was like almost like were just ready for that moment. So.
Yeah. So I do remember that now. Now that you're talking about it, I remember when y'all was out. That's crazy. So what kind of shit did you work on there?
So a lot of it was really nice. Is that like a lot of it was just based around my actual art and my creative process.
Yeah, so it wasn't really like paint this.
Yes, exactly. That was the nice part, is that they were telling me of like what kind of person they were originally looking for, and it was like it perfectly described me, like someone that talks about the creative process a lot and da da da. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly me. Most artists on social media, they like to kind of do a show and not even tell. I like to do show and tell. They just like to show for the most part. They turn around with the canvas and they're like, revealing until my target audience is reached, or I don't know.
Yeah, you just play the music, let the music play, and they just paint. I feel you. I see those. I get stuck with those videos a lot. Instagram, stop showing me that shit.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they were like, we just wanted someone that actually like talked about the creative process and used our products, and like, oh, well, you're the perfect fit. And so I get there. And I mean, I talked to some of them, but like, I think for one of the ideas, I was painting on a skate deck. And so, there's some of the corporate people there, and, it's a huge team of people. And they're like, there's like 7 of them standing over me. They're like, you know what you're going to be drawing? I'm like, no. Like, but that's just how I do things. Like, I'm like, it wasn't a big deal to me, but like to them, I could see the looks. They're like, whew, I hope this works. But like, obviously they all trusted the process. It was an amazing team. Like everyone from like the CEO of Uniball that was there, from like some of the people that were just like makeup artists or just like cleaning things in between sets, all amazing people. I remember like, I think a lot of commercials, it's like, it's pretty set on what you do scene by scene. But I remember if there was certain scenes and like it wasn't really coming out right, it was kind of like a chain of command almost, where it's like if the scene's not working out, this person goes to this, and there's this whole room here with like people watching the screens, and they could call the shot and be like, scratch that scene, move on to the next one. But instead of them being very commanding about it, they'd go like, Cody, is this how you would do it? No? Okay, then how would you do it? Oh, well, let's run it that way then. And so it's just like anything that I did, no matter like if it was just me taking the pen out of the cup and like doing a thing or whatever, just pretending to like look through books for inspiration just for little clips, like they're always like, how would you do it? And just kind of built it around that. So it was very organic and it was a great time.
Hell yeah, man. That's what's up. I was thinking more about what you said about the videos too. Like I feel like every time I see a drawing video online, they don't talk, and then they get to the end of the video, and I'm like, how did you get there? Like from where you started to how you finished, like what got you there. So the talking does help on those videos, like the cooking videos. Like if they were just cooking to music, you wouldn't watch that shit. Like you want to know how they made that shit.
That's I think a lot of the reason for my success early on TikTok, because in 2020 everyone is inside for the lockdowns. There's not really much you could do, and at the time the ratio of content creators to consumers on TikTok was insane. Like there was a very little percentage was actually creating the content. So that means that no matter what video you posted, it was going to do really well, even if it was a shitty ass video. If it had any form of value, it was going to get a lot of
Especially
views.
at that time, people were like starving for entertainment. You were stuck in the crib. I feel you.
And it's like it was like early YouTube or early Vine, where there's no corporations yet in it, so it's just a lot of raw content that you're seeing that's just amazing. And I came connected with all of these artists that have gone on to do big things in music videos or fashion shows or whatever now. But back then we were all just kind of starting in the same place where we all had our passion, and it was like our first time, like first opportunity to actually do something with it and show it off in a unique way. And I think for me, what I brought to kind of the landscape at the time that wasn't there was, if you looked up hashtag art, it was just like someone would do like a hyper realistic portrait of like Billie Eilish or something in colored pencils, and be like 15 seconds where they just kind of show it, and that's the whole video. It's just a popular song. And all the content was the same. And it just really confused me. It's like, why is everyone, like, if everyone's a unique artist, why is everyone making the same content then? Like, is that really how you're going to present your art and like yourself, like in the same way everyone else does? I don't think that was very artistic. And growing up, YouTube was my teacher for the most part. I'm like the first generation of iPad kids, to be honest with you. So like I grew up on that shit. So like I grew up on like time lapses and people voicing over like and explaining the process. And I'm like, why is no one showing the process on this short form content? And so I did my best to do that. And obviously like over time, like things have changed. And now as things have become a lot more corporate on TikTok and all these short form content platforms, like it is harder. And now I think the meta is really just like being able to show what you do in a unique way. It doesn't, like the first 3 seconds at least. Like you got to get them there, and then try your best to just keep their attention. It almost feels like you're a street performer in a big city, but there's a street performer on every corner, and you're just competing for attention of everyone that's walking past.
I feel you. I feel like too with your videos, like the art is already so interesting and like so you that it catches their eye, and then you engage too. You feel me? You don't just click on and hear a song. It's important, but I feel like so you're hitting them with both of those dynamics, which is super important. And you still do a good job now. Even like right now, everything's very oversaturated. Like for the most part, with the new updates on like Instagram, you're not even seeing people that you follow. They're just showing you suggested people every other post. So it's super oversaturated right now, and I feel like you still like you've grown even from when we met, like last year when we met till now. You've grown so much in that time too. It's crazy.
Definitely. Yeah, that's the crazy part with Instagram too, is that I don't know, that with the meta like changing a lot with like what's kind of in terms of what's gonna blow up. It's always very important to stay genuine to who you are, because very easily it just becomes this like I've been stuck in those places where it's like I'm not making the content I'd like to make, and it sucks. Like you need to be able to find some kind of passion in it, or else it's not really like you're gonna burn out at the end of the day. And like a lot of artists and people these days, it's not like the 1600s anymore where you find a wealthy patron or whatever to like just fund your whole art career. You have to now you have to put yourself, you have to be like a business person as well, and be an entertainer kind of, not just an artist. So that's I think that's the big thing that a lot of artists are realizing now, that you have to do a lot more than just your art if you want to get it out there.
1000%. So still talking about your art. One thing you were working on one of the projects you were working on when we first met, that's done now, drawing on the car. I know that was a huge thing for you. That shit, it came out super sick. So tell everybody about that. How'd that come about, and how was that experience for you?
Oh yeah, that was great. Well, we got a DM randomly from some guy, and he's like, "Hey, I'd like you to draw my car." And we get stuff like that all the time, and it's usually some like 17-year-old kid that's like never really. He's just kind of in his head like, "That'd be so cool if you drew my car, bro." And so like we didn't take it seriously because that's what we thought it was. It was just so when he's like, "Oh, I got $20," like, and so we're like, whatever. And just one day I was like, maybe I should message him back. Maybe he was real. Well, you never know. And it was, and he thought I like lived in LA and was like he was gonna fly me out here, but turns out he lives in Marshall, Michigan, which is
That's where our girl was at.
yeah. And so that was like not too far. So just coincidentally, he's like not that far away. I'm like, so he pretty much get that all ready. Get there. It's this weird car. It's called like a caramel blackjack Vanderhall. There's like 3 names to it. I don't understand, but it's a really cool looking car. It's kind of like those. What do you call those 3-wheeled cars? I forget.
I have no idea. You talking about like the ones they use to race down the hill?
Nah, like the one with the 2 wheels in the front, the one in the back, but they look like
Slingshot?
Batmobiles. Yeah,
Slingshot?
like those.
Oh,
Kinda
you're
like
talking
that.
about the nice one.
Yeah, but like those ones are like these ones are like metal, like not the like those ones. Those other slingshots look like they come right out of Amazon Basics plastic like materials a little bit, but these ones it was really cool though. And so I just started drawing right away. I didn't really have too much. I like gave him a plan of like what I'd do for like the hood of the car, but like again, it was just a lot of like. I just like to call my artistic process jazz sometimes, where it's like I just set the pattern down and then just try to come up with different variations and just improv as I go. Yeah. And so it took me a solid 6 days to cover the entire car. But I don't know, it's a very interesting experience for sure. Really cool family. Shout out to Lucas and all of them. I think I'm gonna be drawing on a second car soon. Nice. So yeah, but it was in this like big solar panel warehouse. So every day I would just walk in and there'd be stuff going on, but it was like just the perfect area where I just had my speaker. I could just zone out, smoke a blunt or whatever, and just draw.
Just draw on a car. So he's gonna drive the car. Or is he just preserving it as an art piece?
He drives it around. They got it like spray coated and everything, so it could like take some weathering and stuff.
Okay.
My favorite part though is employees would like kind of come by every day and ask me questions, and then one of them would be like, "Wow, you remind me of like this one artist. I think he has like some kind of clock on his face or something," which is like my profile picture. I'm like, yeah, that's me actually. And he's like, what? So that was a cool experience to just meet some random people out there.
Hell yeah. So earlier you talked about like, what art means to you, how you like to, talk about mental health and, how it helps with your mental health and what art can do for you in that realm. So talk a little bit about that because I feel like that's something that's important to you.
Yeah. I think, well, first off, there's like kind of like 2 types of artists I've noticed. You got like the logical types, which they're really like technically gifted and stuff. And like they kind of have a more logical approach to things. And I think that's a more well-balanced thing there. Then there's like the other artists, which they pull more from their emotions and their feelings and like how like what's going on in their head and stuff. That's more how I do things, and that's where you could have like a pretty big imbalance in your life, I find, because it's like when you pull on those things, it could take you into weird places and stuff. I don't know how to explain it. It's since there's not like a logical approach, you could really find yourself spiraling on certain thoughts or whatever. And like, it's what you do in your day-to-day life and like the certain things, the routines and actions you put yourself through, you're just programming your mind basically every day with whatever you're doing. So it's like if I'm programming my mind to just exaggerate my emotions every day, so I'm able to like figure out how exactly I'm gonna express this, because a lot of the times it's a lot of just like building, redoing, and just like it's like I have my own like Photoshop program in my head where I'm just constantly like collaging things, taking things away, adding it. But sometimes it's hard for me to get out of that mental state if I've just kind of been living that for like all day. So it's important, I think, for me, an artist like that, to find other things outside of that. For me, I actually worked a part-time job at an Asian food store, and that like actually was like a game changer for me because I had something for me. Like I actually could do stuff outside of just like going crazy with the art, and I could just interact with people and like understand just like normal day-to-day societal life. Because I was just every day, just pretty much my job is just being on the internet, like responding to comments and then making art. I didn't really have much time for anything else. So having something like that and some stability, I think, is great. And then that kind of also leads into the next thing, which would be like motivation. And where does that come from? That's one of the big questions I get, and I think a lot of artists struggle with, which is like, how are you, like every day, like how are you gonna come into the studio and make a new song or write a new verse, or for me, draw a new concept? And a lot of it doesn't come down to like psychedelics. It doesn't come down to like your Pinterest board or whatever. It's really just self-discipline and just showing up every day. And I think that's another big thing is sometimes people are a bit too sensitive with themselves and a bit like too like, oh, I don't want to do that. But you really do got to push yourself to a certain extent and know what your body's capable of. And don't tell yourself that like, oh, I can't do that. That's just a self-limiting belief. If you're going to tell yourself you can't do something you could easily do.
Yeah, 1000%. I feel like you said, it's about just getting up and doing it every day. Because at the end of the day, sometimes you're not going to be motivated. You're not going to feel like doing it. It's going to feel like it's not rewarding in the moment, because sometimes, that best reward is going to come in time. It's about what you do every day, just trying to get a little bit better every single day.
Yep, and going back to what Dan Campbell said about just focusing on the task at hand right now. You don't have to think too much into the future, but I don't know. That's another thing I notice, especially with like my generation, is like I'll ask them like, what's your, like, it's always good to have your big goal and also like what you're doing now. And it's either like people have one or the other, but it's hard to kind of connect all the dots there. Like it's either people have what they're doing now, like, oh, I'm going to college, bro, and this and that, but what's after? No idea. Or they're like, I'm gonna be a millionaire by 30. What you doing now, though? I don't fucking know. Like, it's one or the other. So it's always good to like be able to connect the dots between the two and kind of see all the chess moves you're doing.
Yeah,
to that
life's
final
all about
goal.
balance. It's all about balance. So, what are some projects that you are working on in the current moment, if any? I'm sure you got a lot of shit up your sleeve.
Yeah. I think one of the most exciting ones for me is that I'm working on right now. I'm working with star MLB pitcher. His name's Dylan Cease. He pitches for the Padres. I think he recorded the first no-hitter this year. But I'm doing some designs for his disc golf brand. And the reason that's exciting for me is because when I was a kid, I didn't play much sports, but I did play baseball, and I was a pitcher, and I loved the Detroit Tigers growing up. So just being able to, I just know the inner child in me is like fanboying.
Hell yeah,
like,
that's crazy.
I'm like, oh, that's crazy. I got to work with like a pitcher from the MLB, whatever. But then I think the second thing that I did recently, I just finished it, but it was this Endless Paper World that I got commissioned for from this famous YouTuber. His name's Sambucha. He has like 8 million subscribers, but they're like, hey, can you make one of those infinite zoom Endless Paper Worlds? But I want you to hide like 30 YouTubers in there, and it's gonna be like a scavenger hunt where you can find them. So I spent like 2 weeks designing like everyone from like Joe Rogan to Logan Paul to all these Mr. Beast, hiding them in this crazy intricate world. And as I told you, I'm an iPad baby. So like I know like all of the YouTubers. I knew everything. I had so many references. And so finally get to like, he posted the video like a week ago, but I think something went wrong with his file where like the colors were inverted. And so, but it inverted in a weird way where it made all of my white characters black and all my black characters white. And I was just like, yeah, you could probably imagine 2 weeks and I'm just screaming at the screen like, no, Nikocado Avocado's not black. Oh my God. Like, I'm like, am I going to be canceled for this? What's going to happen? He's sitting there like, I don't know. I've never seen that. I don't think the Black Logan Paul exists. And I'm like, what I didn't mean that, dude. And so, I don't know. It was interesting. I felt like Larry David, like when just like something crazy happens to him. It's like, I can't believe this is real. But besides that, yeah, I got I'm always working on tattoo commissions, album covers. I feel like personally I'm a very like psychedelic kind of trippy minded person, but I think most of the albums that I get are mostly like grunge, hard, heavy metal, goth. I think they really like the black and white, like chaotic, expressive work. They're like, but Yeah, I don't know. I like really like experiment with different things. So
Nice. All right. So, what do you want? What do you want to do? What's the goal in the future when it comes to your art, to your life? Like, where do you see yourself going from here?
I think the end goal for me is animated films because that just seems like the ultimate art form to me. But besides that, I think since I was a kid, there's just like I've had this like mental, subconscious like bucket lists of like things I've wanted to do, and I've been slowly checking them off as I've been just kind of going throughout my artistic journey. So like releasing a coloring book, releasing a book. I know comic books somewhere on that list. Having a clothing brand, I already crossed that off. So now it's like certain products I've always wanted to do since I was younger. And there's just all these different things. And as I kind of continue to develop, there'll be cooler opportunities, music videos that I want to do. And they just kind of naturally present themselves because, the more that I become who I want to be, the more things kind of just like fall into place, I guess. And so for me, I think a lot of my world is driven by the different scenarios and realities I imagine in my head because that's all I do for my artwork is just like, what if I did this or what if I did that? So that's all where my mind goes when I'm not thinking about art is like, how is this interview going to go today? And I'd think about the 30 possibilities of how it could go or whatever.
Yeah, I think it went pretty well.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
Yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. I'm not even high. I didn't even smoke. I forgot.
You didn't smoke. It's okay. You can save it for later. We got plenty more
Yeah.
where that came from too. But yeah, man, that's what's up. I think, man, animated films would be crazy. I still want to do some type of animated music video. We got to collab on something like that. It'd be crazy. Because nobody's doing that right now. So, especially from Detroit, that shit would be insane. Nassan hasn't done it yet, so we need to do it before Nassan does it because his video has been fucking crazy. But okay, man. Is there anything else you want to shout out? Anybody you want to shout out? Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Well, one thing is I'd like for you guys to check out my website, synthetic.shop, if you haven't yet. That's where you can find this woven hoodie that I'm wearing here, and many other things. We got like prints, original artwork, if you ever want to reach out. I always want to try new things too, so feel free to reach out if you have something crazy. Like I'm working on a welding mask right now for a client. I'm drawing on guitars for people. I've had people contact me. I haven't had the chance yet, but I'd love to draw on a motorcycle even. There's so many different things I want to try. So if you want to collaborate or, reach out for commission or something, I'm always looking for new opportunities and new just experiences and stuff to kind of just make content and artwork with. So I guess that's all I really want to shout out for the most part.
Hell yeah, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show. This was dope. I'm glad that people got to know you a little bit better. I got to know you a little bit better. So this has been the Loft 313. I'm your host, Felix the Don, aka Top 2, Not 2. We out.
How we get here, things feel so off. How we get here, things feel so off. Haven't returned my text or calls. Baby, what happened where things go wrong? Can't even bring you around none of my dogs. Cause you going out in your best dress. Oh, you say you living your best life now. Oh, nothing left to do, so I'ma stay rolling. I'ma just let you have your moment. Baby, I know you gon' love me when you're sober. So I won't even say I told you when it's over. Won't say I told you when it's over. No, you gon' love me when it's time. Cause you hit me with cold shoulders. Said, yeah, hot girl summer isn't over. Where's that good girl? I don't know her no more. Oh, hit me with cold shoulders. Said, yeah, hot girl summer isn't over. Where's that good girl? I don't know her no more. Oh, and you can hit me on a late night, babe. Whenever you wanna make time, babe. You show no emotions, I don't fake mine, babe. Summer got you high, you was too far, babe. Couldn't get it right, but at least we tried, babe. How many guys tryna slide on you tonight? Don't lie, babe. Cause when it's over, won't say I told ya. When it's over, no, you gon' love me when it's time, but you hit me with cold shoulders. Said, yeah, hot girl summer isn't over. Where's that good girl? I don't know her no more. Oh, hit me with cold shoulders. Said, yeah, hot girl summer isn't over. Where's that good girl? I don't know her no more. Oh, things feel
happen when things go wrong. Can't even bring you around none of my dogs, cause you going out in your best dress. Oh, you say you living your best life now. Hit me, cold shoulder, said your happy summer isn't over. Where's the good girl? I don't know her.